Tonight, we're going to appoint all three alternates. How about that? Since we're missing
It's a coup.
Kevin, Diane, and
Donna.
who else was missing?
Donna.
So you can choose whichever one you want to appoint. They're not going to show up, I don't think. Okay, the next order of business is the approval of the minutes of September 19th regular meeting.
I actually saw some.
Somebody want to move that?
I will. I've read the minutes, Dave, and I think they're satisfactory as they were submitted. And I motion that we accept them.
Okay, I'll second it.
Second,
Discussion?
any discussion?
I wasn't here. Was the attorney's name Lewis Hassett or Ray Hassett?
Oh, neither. It's Lou George.
Thank you. There you go.
Good call.
Yeah, I thought that was
That's right.
I wasn't sure if it was Ray or Lou who was here, but I was pretty sure it wasn't Lou Hassett.
And the firm is Hassett.
Hassett and George, right.
Got that.
Does that need to be corrected? I can't remember.
It should. So I offer a friendly amendment to correct it to Lou George instead of Louis George instead of Lewis Hassett.
I read Lou George.
There you go.
I wouldn't have known.
Because I know Lou. All right,
It's probably because I wasn't here that I caught it, right?
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None?
Abstain, I wasn't here.
I should abstain. I wasn't actually here, so I should abstain. So
Motion carries. We get 5-1. I watched the video, so.
Awesome.
All right. Next order of business is a public hearing on the residential parking space requirement opt-out. And Jackie, would you read the call, please?
Sure. The legal notice. The Town of Simsbury Zoning Commission will hold a public hearing at regular meeting on Monday, October 3rd, 2022, at the Simsbury Town Offices, 933 Hot Meadow Street, Simsbury, Connecticut, 06070, in the main meeting room at 7 p.m. A resolution to opt out of the provision of subdivision 9 of subsection D of the section 8-2 of the Connecticut General Statutes as amended by Public Act 21-29 regarding limitations on parking spaces for dwelling units. At this hearing, interested parties can be heard on the issues, or written communications may be emailed to jhollis@simsbury-ct.gov by 12 p.m. on October 3rd, 2022. A copy of the above is on file in the office of the Simsbury Planning Department, 933 Hot Meadow Street, Simsbury, Connecticut, for public inspection. And it's signed by Dave Ryan, Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's see. Do you have any comments from the commissioners in the public hearing? George, can you explain the circumstances on this?
Sure, absolutely. Public Act 2129 had two items that you considered opting out, and during your meetings at the end of 21 and through January 3rd, where you met a resolution that opted out of the ADU portion of the Public Act 2122. In fact, as you read that entire motion, or the entire resolution, talks all about the ADUs. It doesn't make any mention of the parking opt-out, even though the parking opt-out was noticed in the ad. It was, and so I think maybe you were thinking about it again. I wasn't here. I did go back and try to and listen to all the meetings, and frankly, not one word was mentioned on parking. So I reread it and said, it's recommended that you do this again to include those sections. Actually, PA 2129 had different sections of opt-out for those two. One was obviously the ADU, and that was what you referenced. So we brought this back to you to do it again before we take it back on to the Board of Selectmen. And we would recommend that you consider the draft resolution that we included in the packet. If you want to get into the specifics, there are mandatory parking standards included in PA 2129 that if you don't opt out, and again, you don't opt out with every public hearing that's sent it on to the Board of Selectmen, you'd be faced with those requirements, which were I put up a little bit of a table for you. Our town regulations, we require 2 spaces per residential unit. The state legislation broke it down further by only requiring 1 space per studio units, 1 space for 1 bedroom units, and 2 spaces for 2 bedroom units. So again, that's a state mandate, as I think you included previously in your findings, the desire to have local ordinances that reflect the values of the community.
I agree.
So,
Thank you. And any questions from the commissioners? I know Bruce made the comment that we don't want to force people to park in the street, so that's one of those things that I think is appropriate for Simsbury to opt out of it. Do we get any public comment?
we've received no public comment by email or letter.
Okay. Does anyone in the public care to speak to this?
Public. Hot topic.
Okay. I don't think there's any difficult issue here.
Yeah, I mean, all I'd say is that looking at the somehow mine decided to stop working, so I'm kind of cheating off your homework here. If I understand correctly, the state regulation only limit it to the ones, or not limit it to the 1 states, but allow for only 1 space in the studio unit or the 1 bedroom unit. How much of a risk is there that we're actually forcing people to park on the street if they're living in a 1 bedroom, unless they have 2 cars, which is, it seems like it doesn't seem like that's a very common occurrence. I, of course, don't have any stats to back that up, but just in general, a studio apartment person or someone living in a studio apartment, do they own 2 cars? Whereas the 2 bedrooms, it's like, okay, sure, 1 person in each bedroom has the space for their car and doesn't force them onto the street. Does the state really force people out onto the street with their guidance?
Consider, a young couple that were living in a studio apartment and were working with a car.
Right. Yeah.
So, that could happen easily.
I suppose you're right,
Yeah, I think that the best answer to that would be that may be the case, and that's something that if this commission wanted to look at kind of as an overall review of residential parking standards, you could do that just as you went through an amendment process to tailor your ADU, your accessory dwelling unit standards to kind of fit what we have in the community. That way, it's kind of our ordinance, it's our language,
Right.
and we can fix it whenever you want. Again, if you kind of stay with the state only,
right.
you're really
You're
reliant.
limited, right? Yeah.
So that's what I would say is that that's something you as a commission want to look at. You can do that going down the road.
The problem, Tucker, is if we don't opt out, we lose all the control. We can always decide to change it on our own in the future if we think that's appropriate. But if we don't opt out, then we're forced into that standard and we have no options in the future.
That's a good point. Thank you.
Okay, are we ready to close the public hearing?
I'll make a motion if you'd like to close the
Okay.
public hearing.
Do we hear
I'll
a
second it.
second? And Melissa, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining. Nobody's abstaining or opposed, so it carries 6-0. Thank you, we're closed. Public hearing is closed. And now we're in new business, which is to discuss the residential parking opt-out resolution, which I have somewhere.
I have to put it on the screen, Chairman.
Okay. Are we ready to make a motion to that extent? Okay, go ahead, Jackie, why don't you do that? Then we can discuss
And
it.
read it.
Yep,
I'll make a motion for Public Act number 21-29 parking requirement opt-out. The resolution, whereas the Town of Simsbury Zoning Commission intend to initiate the process to opt out of the provision of subdivision 9 of subsection D of section 8-2 of the Connecticut General Statutes as amended by Public Act number 21-29 regarding limitations on parking spaces for dwelling units. Whereas the zoning commission believed that it is advisable and in the best interest of the town for the zoning commission to retain the local ability to regulate parking requirements to ensure said regulations reflect Simsbury's unique location, geography, and citizens' needs. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the zoning commission hereby affirmatively elect to opt out of these provisions as authorized by Section 5 of the Public Act Number 21-29, dated at the town of Simsbury, Connecticut. Is it today's date? October 3rd, 2022.
Here, a second. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ian. Further discussion.
I'm in favor of opting out.
Okay.
I'm in favor of opting out.
I'm in favor of opting out.
You guys made a very strong case. I'm in favor.
Bruce?
I don't have anything to add to the discussion.
Okay. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain. Carries 6-0. Thank you very much.
Thanks, George.
And the final order of business on today's agenda is to discuss, George has some comments on the sign regulation that he'd like to update us on the process to get out of where we are.
I haven't intended where you have. I just wanted to give you a sense of what we're doing. I've been here about 6 months now. This is one of the items that this commission was working on, and maybe it got derailed, maybe we kind of abandoned it. So staff has kind of brought itself up to speed on where I think where we maybe we need to be. So we've talked internally, and what we're going to suggest is to restart the process with a recommended focus on temporary signs only. So to start with temporary signs.
Great.
As I read both your zoning ordinances, I might say both. I mean, center zone has essentially its own set, different than the town, the town-wide regulations. But it seems to us that it's focus on the temporary signs, because the temporary signs where we have the potential, where we're most vulnerable to challenge, based on recent Supreme Court decisions and the whole discussion of having a sign ordinance that is content neutral. I think I'm less worried about the general sections, for permanent signage, so to speak. But we would recommend we start with the temporary as a focus. And I think the approach, unless you give me different guidance, is not to. It's really not to hassle with current allowances, current sizes. Current or add additional restrictions. Let's just make that portion of your ordinance content neutral.
Great.
We're working on how to do that. I mean, the biggest challenge is that Supreme Court decisions have really said, if you have to read the sign, it's illegal. You have to read the sign to know what kind of sign it is and how big it can be and where it can go. It's not content neutral. So we need to make our temporary signs content neutral. So we'll work on doing that. So we started to do that. I think what we'd like to do, and I don't think the commission needs to be involved immediately. I think we should start meeting, particularly with business stakeholders. I mean, we are a community that relies on temporary signs for lots of stuff.
Yeah.
And not to mention, political campaigns. We are a town that has an event every weekend.
Directional.
A run,
Yeah,
a
absolutely.
run or something like that every weekend. So we want to be able to accommodate that.
Yeah, a lot of events.
And that's important to the community, clearly. So I think that's where we're headed. We're gonna talk to Sarah at Main Street. We're gonna talk to Morgan at the Chamber and kind of start there with the stakeholder involvement. I mean, because those are the folks that rely on those temporary signs for lots of things. But I think my only question for you tonight, is there anything that maybe I missed? I mean, obviously, I wasn't here when you had these conversations and went through the model ordinance and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, is there anything that, particularly that you want to see, that maybe we weren't able to bring you previously?
I'd like to talk about signage. I see in the center, I'm in the center every day, and there seems to be some signs advertising things in other towns that didn't used to be, something that we did. So that's something that I'd like to address.
We may not be able to address it.
Okay,
Sounds like
that's fair.
Sounds like content.
We may not, right?
Yeah.
You have to read
And-
it, then,
Yeah,
so. We may
But
be-
can we regulate it by who puts
Yeah.
it there?
We cannot do that either.
I mean, you can't make it a residential requirement?
You cannot. I mean, yeah, you can have different sizes. Remember, it's a time, place, manner discussion. So in your residential districts, yes, you can have an approach where you allow less
No, I'm
size,
talking about-
Size
those kinds of things, and be more permissive.
within a
In your
setback.
commercial districts,
Mhm.
you can, but again, have to apply equally across the board.
But do we have to allow people from out of town to get a permit? Can we restrict permits to Simsbury residents?
No, I do not believe you can.
or Simsbury
I do
businesses.
not
Or
believe you
Simsbury-
That's
or
my
Simsbury
thought.
businesses?
Yeah.
No. So I think we're the stuff that we have read is, I mean, essentially it comes down to when we're talking about temporary signs,
Mhm.
that you may want to consider just a total number and a total square footage on individual property without permit, essentially permanently. I mean,
I don't know about that.
well, you gotta think about, everybody, you get one temporary sign at 4 square feet. Because you
Right.
can't control message. So that message could be
Right.
George for Congress. It could be,
So temporary for forever? There'd be no ending to them having a sign?
potentially. So now we have some temporary signs that are permitted for 60 days, like
Mhm.
political signs. But we've got event signs that
Yeah.
don't have a limitation. Well, you can't do that.
And we have some business properties that have multiple right now.
You do.
Yeah.
You do. So enforcement is part of our challenge. I mean, we do have a challenge with enforcement. I mean, it's not that fun to, call the Boy Scouts and tell them they can't have their signs up on the corner for advertising their pumpkin sale. Well, it's not going to do that. So we have to build a regulatory structure that
I'm not so worried about the pumpkins as it is
Well, for instance.
the business
For
that's,
instance.
yeah.
But yeah, the business, there are a lot of business signs. So we have to agree on what thresholds we're comfortable with.
Hold on.
So one A-frame sign, for instance.
With
George, while you're talking to what I would call stakeholders, I think it's important to talk to the nonprofit organizations as well.
Absolutely. And
I mean, the Boy Scouts,
Yes.
the church.
the sports leagues.
Great point.
Sports leagues.
Yep.
Registration. It's registration time for whatever. It's always registration time for something.
Little League,
This
you know,
town.
Little League,
Hockey. Yeah, it's hockey right now.
So we,
Basketball.
I want us to face a little bit of reality too with what kind of community we are, which is a community that does lots of stuff.
We're a sign
Yeah.
community.
But and so we have to kind of tolerate that. And again, you can't tolerate some of those signs that are temporary and not all of the types of temporary signs. That becomes the issue.
don't political signs have other rules that aren't just like our zoning, right? So we wouldn't have to worry about a political sign being up for all year because it'd be a SEEK violation eventually, right? So it's at least in that, wouldn't it be?
Only
Yeah,
if they're.
what file?
Aren't you reusing it for
Only if it's a
multiple
CEP Only if
campaigns?
it's a CEP case. Only if it's CEP.
So what? Someone could just have their sign up all year round, all the
So
time.
you can have a sign up today that has a message
Mm-hmm.
that says, "We love rainbows." Like, that is permitted,
Sure.
and that sign can be on your property today.
Sure.
Time in memoriam.
And that becomes the issue, which is if that sign can be up permanently, well, what is the difference with the political sign that's the same size? That's what communities are challenged with. Now, one of the other things we have to do is we have to also kind of balance what our own risk wants to be. Do we want to be a little bit more open to challenge to get the things that we agree upon by consensus? So that is part of it.
Mm.
One of my focuses on sign ordinances has always been promoting harmony in our community. And and things like setbacks and I think that can make for better neighborly relations sometimes.
Yeah. So, yeah, spacing, size,
Yeah.
setbacks.
Yeah.
Total number. And that really is what ought to be in your sign ordinance. And less about definitions, categorical definitions of different types of temporary signs. And so we'll come back to you and we'll have it, of course, reviewed by the town attorney and those kinds of things. And I'll give you a little progress update so you know where we are and what we're working on and if we're going in the right direction, because it really is, it's going to be your.
I, for one, appreciate this because I think that the effort we got into before ended up with too much volume of words and too much conflict and confusion.
And that wasn't necessarily the temporary signs, though, too.
No,
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
I think everybody sort of said, I don't
Well,
like this.
I agree with you, Dave, but I think George better be ready for Bob DiCrescenzo's position on this because he gave us that giant document that came
So
from
is that-
somewhere.
Is
and
that a
said
place
this is
you
what
can
we
start?
needed to do.
Understood.
So beware.
Understood.
It's a,
Before we move on from this topic, could you just clarify for me? Did I hear it said here and agreed to that we can't regulate the duration of a sign being posted in Simsbury?
You can.
Yeah.
That's not what I said. You can. You just, when we're talking about temporary signs, you have to treat them the same. And so the duration.
So what makes them
is the same
temporary?
for temporary signs.
Okay.
That's good.
I agree.
Welcome back
That's a good
to-
point. It's
No, I
definitely made of
agree,
a certain
Bruce.
material to be like,
That's how we
temporary.
had
temporary.
monitored it in the
I remember
past.
when there was a political sign at the top of the hill on 315 in Terriffill that was pretty unflattering to President Obama. The
Yeah.
resident of that property, the owner, was not a fan.
Wow.
And that thing was offensive and it was up there for months.
Yeah.
Well, same over here. I won't
That's
say
not
where.
a resident, so I don't, is that different?
We'll have that conversation.
Okay.
Well,
I don't know. It was my understanding from one of your predecessors that we were unable to compel removal of that sign.
Because it was political.
And it
Yeah.
fell down and
Speech.
got stolen or something.
what I was going to say, I think the residents of Terriffill eventually took care of that one.
Thank you.
somehow it went away, and I
Yeah,
don't know
yeah.
how.
It's not my favorite topic to get into, but I do think we have to.
Yeah.
Make sure we're right.
Yeah.
We'll vote for rainbows.
It's just hard. It's because there's lots of stakeholders. And,
Right.
you know, people care about their signs. And so, so
Mm.
Okay, we have gone a few minutes past the record,
Good job, Dave.
but
Dave, would you like a motion to adjourn?
Of course.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second the motion.
Second, Tucker, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? No. Carries 6-0.
Mm.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Number 17.